This video is part of the Weed Warriors Removing Invasive Plants to Benefit Native Plants and Pollinators video series. This video series is funded by Legacy Partners in Environmental Education. In this area, we have both English ivy on the ground and Chinese privet growing as a shrub. I'm going to show you a couple of manual removal methods, and I'll show you how to cut and spray and demonstrate how to use both types of methods. So first thing you should know is that manual removal is not going to work as quickly and probably not as effectively as using chemicals. However, in some areas such as wetlands and streams, you want to avoid using herbicide because they could impact sensitive habitats. You might also have an area that has rare or sensitive plants, and you want to make sure that you don't accidentally get herbicide on them. The easiest thing to use are going to be your hands. With English ivy, you can simply pull up the runners. You want to try to get the roots out, because sometimes you need a hand tool to dig, so you'll want something like a spade or even a soil knife. It can be really helpful, but a lot of the time they'll just pull right up. And then you want to remove that material off site. You can sometimes compost this, but a lot of the time we'll just put it in the trash because the plants are so invasive. We want to make sure they don't resprout or regrow. You don't want to just move your problem around. The next tool, you can use pruners. These are loppers, and they're used for pruning shrubs and trees. They're most effective on the Chinese privet. You can simply take the loppers and cut close to the ground. Again, you want to move that plant material off-site. You want to have a place where it doesn't have moisture, and you might even want to put it in the dumpster, just throw it away. The next step up when we talk about manual removal methods is a weed wrench. If you have larger shrubs, if you have a little bit of a budget, you might want to buy a weed wrench. There's different sizes, and you can get them for around $100 to $200. They're fairly effective at pulling out smaller size shrubs. So weed wrench is a pretty good tool. It is a lot like a regular wrench that you might have used. It's got teeth here where you want to get the stem of that plant. So you're going to find a plant that you want to pull up. You want to get the weed wrench on the base of that plant. You're going to clamp it, and then it's going to let you pull it up using the leverage of the weed wrench more easily than if you pulled it by hand. Just like with the English ivy, you can pull the privet, especially smaller size privet, and sometimes if you are going to go with a group and volunteer, they call it a privet pull. You just want to pull up as much of that root as you can because the roots will resprout and grow again. One of our favorite methods here that's manual removal, and we usually use the manual and the chemical together. One of our favorite methods is to use a chainsaw. We actually have a small electric chainsaw that we can use for some of the larger size privet.
Today I'm going to show you mixing herbicide to spray on invasive species. When you go to the store, you're going to want to make sure to get at least 40% glyphosate as the active ingredient, and that'll be on the front label. You're going to want to know what type of species you're going to be spraying and then what type of application you're going to choose. For that information, you're going to want to find your county extension office site, and they will have information on the concentrate mixture that you're going to mix once you get home, and the type of applicator you want to use. In our case, we're using a sprayer, and we're going to do a direct application onto a cut stump. Sometimes that's called painted on, where we're going to get really close to our stump, and we're going to put our nozzle right on the stump and directly apply only to the cut stump of privet. Your county extension site will also have information on doing a foliar spray as well as other options. At the store, you're going to make sure you've got at least that 40% active ingredient of a glyphosate. This is 52%. Your back label here is going to have all your important safety information, and you're going to want to be familiar with that before you start mixing. You're also going to want to have an idea of how much spray you need, because once you put it in the applicator, you don't want to store this long term. The herbicide will dissolve the seals and the rubber parts inside your applicator, so you want to mix just enough for the job, and then you want to have a plan to store or dispose of properly what's left over. Our applicator, this specific one, has a 2-gallon fill. Most of your information is going to say how to mix per 1 gallon, so you need to make sure you understand your instructions. Your personal protective equipment, you're going to want a good pair of gloves to keep the herbicide from contacting your hands. You're also going to want to wear some type of eye protection in case there's any splashback. Again, all that important information is going to be on your back label, and you want to be very familiar with that before you start mixing. You'll also want an either glass or stainless steel measuring device. And what you do is you take your concentrate, you measure it out, and then I like to add water to this. It helps reduce the bubbles because you don't want a lot of foam in your applicator. You're going to slowly and carefully pour it into a clean, dry applicator, and then you're going to top it off to the fill line.
Now that I've shown you the manual removal methods, I want to show you a little bit about how to use the chemical method. You can use different types of spray bottles. There's a spray method for herbicide, and you can do a foliar spray or a stem spray, and I'll show you how we cut and spray to do the stem spray. And sometimes we'll do a hack and spray. So if you have a larger tree or shrub, you could do a hack and spray. But pretty much what we want to do with our Chinese privet is going to be the cut and spray. And with the English ivy, we're just going to do a foliar spray. The time of year is important because you want to make sure that those plants are going to take in the chemical as much as possible to kill the roots of the plant. This is a pretty simple, inexpensive spray bottle. This has a pump on it. And you won't wear your hand out as much as a smaller spray bottle that's like a cleaning spray bottle. You can also get a backpack sprayer, which has a pressurized pump to it as well. So I'm going to show you first how to do the foliar spray on the English ivy. We simply find that English ivy and we spray it. And we want to soak it pretty well with the herbicide. So for a relatively small Chinese privet, you can use the loppers along with your spray bottle. If you have a larger diameter Chinese privet, you'll want to use something like a chainsaw or a hand saw. So I'm going to use the loppers and I'll cut and spray. It's important to spray immediately after you cut because after a certain amount of time it can't soak in that herbicide. So you want to cut and spray together, not separately. If you have someone else you're working with, you might have them do the cutting and another person follow up with the sprayer. In this video series, we've learned about how to identify plants, to tell the difference between native plants and invasive plants. I hope at this point you can identify Chinese privet and English ivy and know basic methods to remove them using your hands, tools, and herbicide. So, what are you going to do now? If you're able to volunteer at this time, you can come to the Arboretum and we'll teach you hands-on how to remove these plants. And you can help the Arboretum by removing invasive plants. Now that you know how to identify invasive plants and how to remove them, you have the skills to make a plan to remove them from your own property or an area in your community, such as a church or school. So what are the steps that you need to do to make that plan? Well, the first thing you need to do is find out where that area is. Make some kind of survey. Use things like measuring tape, mapping program on your phone. It could be something as simple as Google Maps. You could draw a hand map. You can use some kind of flagging tape or flags to help you to identify that location and take photos of what it looks like. You need to have an end goal in sight of, what that site is going to look like. You may need to make plans to replant. You're going to need to have a budget and a timeline. So based on how much area of invasive plants you have, you'll be able to make some kind of calculation for how long it will take you and how many tools you'll need. You're going to want to recruit others to help. So you need to get volunteers, friends, family members, whoever that is. And then you need to train them and make sure that they understand how to use these tools. So you're going to have to teach them to use a weed wrench. You're going to have to teach them how to mix the herbicide. Then you're going to want to actually plan for the time to implement the project. You want to remove the plants. And then at the end of your project, you want to document with photos, take some more measurements, and see how effective was this. Do we need to make any changes? You're probably going to come back for at least 2 or 3 years, and then you're going to keep an eye on it. This is not a one-time fix. This is something that you're going to need to do over multiple years, multiple seasons, to make sure that you're staying on top of the invasive species.